Welcome to Real Life with Jenny. My name's Jenny Sendapudaratna. Grab your favorite drink, let's get a snack, and we'll get started. Today I have Lady Grey tea and some white chocolate pretzels. Yum, yum, yum. Anyway, let's get real. Now, why do I have white chocolate pretzels, do you ask? Good question. Thank you for asking. They are actually one of my daughter's favorite snacks. When she was gluten-free, which was for 7 or 8 years. We were gluten-free in our house, and she could have gluten-free crackers dipped in white chocolate, and it was a snack that they had at Aldi, and it was one of her faves. And so this week was actually her 16th birthday. I know, how am I old enough to have a 16-year-old? Who knows? But it was her 16th birthday, and we threw a surprise party. And I will tell you, it was one of the most difficult, challenging 2 to 3 months of my life. I decided to throw the birthday party for her in 2021, which was before her 15th birthday, that we would have this year as her surprise party. So I've been keeping this secret for a really long time. And I was doing things sneakily. I was texting her friends. I'd go on her phone and I'd get their numbers and say, "Hey, this is Samantha's mom. This isn't creepy." Connecting with kids on Instagram, trying to get people involved, trying to find a place and the food. And of course, if you know me at all, and if you don't, that's fine. I love crafting for her birthday. It is one of my favorite things. I make cupcake toppers. I make the banner. I think one year I bought a banner, but it was only one year and I had a kidney stone surgery days before. So every year I've made a banner. Every year I make a door wreath. I love decorating for her birthday. It is one of my favorite things to do. And this year I did not make a cake, but almost every other year I've made a cake because I love making cakes. I don't like eating them. I'm not a cake person, but I do love to decorate them. It goes way back to my 20s when I took a cake decorating class. I went, "This is amazing." And then I realized I don't like tea cake, so it didn't really work. Anyway, so I have spent 3 months doing things without her knowing. So she would walk in the room and I would throw a blanket over the top of my hot glue gun. And yes, it was a little messy. I'll be honest. It's kind of been a hit or miss kind of situation. But I have been doing things when she's out of the house for school and she goes for a walk, and I'll pull out my crafts and I'll do it quick and then I'll throw it away, put it away. And so like, how do you make up excuses while you're cleaning the house? And, how do you make up excuses for me doing 100 errands that I would never do? And at this time, during the getting ready for her birthday party, I also had to plan the birthday party she thought we were having. Because if I didn't throw something, she'd be like, "What is happening?" She'd be suspicious because Mom always likes to make a big deal about birthdays other than her own. She does not like her own birthday party. And yes, the rule in our house is we do not surprise Mom. Never will Mom have a surprise party because she will just walk out of the room. I don't like surprises. Anyway, so I'm doing this, and to my great delight, I will be honest, she walked in the room. We rented a room from someone it was just a beautiful, beautiful place. And she walked in and she was completely surprised. She had no clue. She really had no idea that it was happening. And it was such a fun, neat moment to have her see everyone that she loved in that room. And I have been thinking about it for several days now. And it really made me stand in awe of something that I didn't think it would. Not only did I realize that I'm not great at being deceitful, that is not something I'm good at. It actually super stressful. I was up pretty much for those 2 months without sleeping because I'd have things running through my head because I couldn't talk about them because she was around all the time. So I couldn't talk to my husband. I couldn't talk on the phone. I wasn't telling people what was going on. So the poor people that went out to dinner with me would have to hear it all and be like, "Okay, Jenny, let's move on." I appreciate you very much, those who went out with me and listened to me blabble on about stuff. But I stand in awe because it is so it has so reminded me of my relationship with God. And I know that sounds super bizarre. Like, you're like, what in the world, Jenny? Can you twist anything into a lesson? And really, it's not that I'm twisting it into a lesson. It is just something that I stood there and I watched my daughter in complete shock with all the people she loved. And I cried, of course, because that's what I do. And I was standing there and they're all playing games together, and everybody had pizza and cupcakes and they were playing games together. And I had this little thing drop in my heart of, Jenny, I had the same kind of plans for you. And I was like, okay, Lord, this is really like, do you see what's happening right now? This is really not the time to like have a spiritual moment. But it stuck with me. I have been talking for 3 years on this podcast, almost 3 years. We're not quite there yet. Let's not start celebrating. But 2 3/4 years, I have been talking on this podcast about God having a plan for us. And I loved afterwards when I got to sit down with my daughter and tell her everything we had done and all the teeny tiny little details of things that we did that led up to the perfect moment at her surprise party where she was completely shocked and felt loved and cherished. And God is doing the same in my life, and I just don't see it, right? He is working in small, minute details, moving this and making a plan that the cupcakes will be there on time, and moving this person's heart here, and doing things that I do not see. Because I'm not looking for it, right? She was not looking for the details of a surprise party. Once you've had a surprise party, you are always looking for the details, right? Like, you are looking like, oh, that was highly suspicious. I'm guessing they're throwing me a surprise party. Like, afterwards, you're always looking. But until that surprise and that moment, if you haven't had that, you are not really looking, unless you're a highly suspicious person, and good for you. But with the Lord, that is something that I'm not always looking for. I look at like, Lord, where are you some days? What are you doing? And He is off doing things to set things in place for my future, for that great moment that everything comes together and I see all of the small details that He put together to bring together that great plan. Now, I know that you're like, Jenny, God doesn't throw surprise parties. And I'm guessing He doesn't, but I will be honest with you. God surprises me almost every single day. There is always something that I'm like, wow, who knew? When I am reading through my Bible, there are times that I'm like, oh, wow. You realize that this is definitely a spoiler for later. Today I was reading in Deuteronomy, and he's talking about if you ever want a king. And I was like, oh my goodness, he just laid out exactly what the kings are going to do that they're not supposed to do and why they shouldn't do it. I was like, oh wow, there it is. And it is years before King Solomon and King David come around. And I was like, oh, wow, God can put Easter eggs in your life. If you don't know what an Easter egg is, it is a surprise that kind of shows or will nod back to something else. I call them spoilers. Maybe they're not called those. But they're little tidbits in a movie or in a book that shows you an inkling of what's in the future, but it doesn't give away the full future. And God is dropping those in your life right now. If you open your eyes to say, you know what, Jenny, I want you to speak. This is something that He called me to when I was very newly married. And He gave me a vision of things that I was like, Lord, that makes no sense. I don't get up in front of people. And then years later, He dropped me into a classroom full of third graders and said, I want you to teach these third graders. And that first week, I felt like I was going to throw up. I was so nervous in front of those third graders. And 6 years of teaching little girls about Jesus in new and different ways and expanding my horizons, I honestly very rarely get nervous in front of people. It is not something that God has really brought me through, and it was not something that was super easy for me. And I look back and I know that when I stand up in front of a crowd, my nerves are gone because of what God taught me back many years ago when I was teaching those third grade girls. Actually, it was second grade girls. Wow, that was really crazy. Anyway, second grade girls. That is when he taught me how to speak in front of people. He started that process way back then, and I had no idea it would bring me to where I am now in 2023. I had no clue that that would be my journey. And so as I was putting together a surprise party and making sure all the details were there, I worked my tail off to make sure every detail that she would never notice was there. And that's what God's doing for you. He is working in the background, putting together every detail that you may not even ever notice. And you may not find out till you get to heaven what details he put together and wove together to make your success, or the things that he has called for you to do, to be successful. So let's lean into that. Let's lean into that. We know that God's plan is for us to have a future and a hope. His plan is for us to succeed. His plan is for us to follow him and to take steps of faith with him. And so that is what I'm going to do. I am going to lean into when I hear to move forward and what God calls me to do, to know that he's been working for years on the small details, just like I did for my daughter's surprise party, working on the small details that nobody else noticed. Nobody else noticed the cupcake things unless I pointed them out. Because they were little typewriters that said, "Happy birthday, Samantha," and they were on a sword. And I made them to be "The pen is mightier than the sword," because my daughter loves to write. And so I was probably the only one that caught that small little detail, just that she knew that I saw that she's going to be a great writer. And I knew that her pen is going to be much mightier than a sword. And that's what God's doing for you. He is working out those minor details that you may never notice behind the scenes for the plan he's got for you. Well, that is all I have for you. I pray that you begin to see those small details and that you continue to follow after his plan. And no matter where you are, if you're discouraged or you're frustrated or you're just not seeing what he's doing, know that he's working out those small details behind the scenes. He is working his tail off too, to bring the plan that he has for you to fruition. Well, you can find me at Real Life with Jenny on Instagram, on Facebook, and at christconnection.cc/Jen. All of my info is on all three of those places. I'd love to connect with you. I pray that this week, as you move forward, and maybe you don't see those details that God's working out, but I want you to hold on to, no matter what life throws at you, that God is working for you behind the scenes, working on those details. You may not see that surprise party coming, but God's planning it. Have a great week.